And to drive that culture, you really need to feel that you make a difference. And to make a difference, you need to feel that you're connected to a strategy.
Hello, I've got Maria Nordstrom with me again. Welcome back, Maria.
Thank you, John.
Hey, loving these discussions about driving a high-performance culture.
Yes.
And one of the things that I'm really interested in, I know you've talked about a lot, is the whole area of metrics and strategy. And can one go without the other and so on and so forth. I'd like to explore that topic a little bit.
Okay. Well, I think, metrics is very easy. It's the numbers that you have in the sales organisation. It's your target. It's the number of, that's the revenue, that's the number of units. It's, it's what you're measured on. And that's what the organisation is measured on, because obviously there are other metrics outside the sales area as well. The key is, I think, my experience tells me, and having worked in organisations before, I was with Xerox for many years. I worked for an American company, and the American company was very much focused just on the metrics. There wasn't really a strategy per se. And I think,
here's our products, here's our services, here's what you've got to sell, go do it.
Go do it, exactly. And,
Okay.
So we had a local strategy, that was kind of a strategy, but the overall organisation only worked with a metrics plan. And I still think today that is not unusual. You create your vision, you have your values, and you put all of that up on the wall at the kick-off at the beginning of the year. Mm-hmm. But the plan that you manage every week or every month is basically the metrics plan. And there are certain times when you do your big town hall meetings or you have a review meeting, and at that point you may just bring up those.
Mm-hmm. Here's how we're doing, and we're not doing so well in this area or that area. What are you doing about it?
So, but that's the metrics plan. But at that point, you may actually bring up the overall messaging that you had in the beginning of the year. Mm-hmm. Some organisations don't necessarily do a lot with that. My experience shows or tells me that basically the organisations generally focus on delivering, reports around the metrics.
Yeah.
And I think if you actually just do that to create a high-performing culture, it's very difficult, because all you're saying to the people is, the numbers is the only thing that's important. And of course they're important, because that's what drives your organisation and outcomes.
Without it, we don't survive.
Absolutely. But if we don't create a culture where you feel valued and a value contributor to that outcome, and you're creating that culture,
we're not going to get the outcome anyway.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And to drive that culture, you really need to feel that you make a difference. And to make a difference, you need to feel that you're connected to a strategy that is more than just a metric that goes for a month, 6 months, or a year. So you have a much longer term strategic intent. And in that strategic intent, you work with the people within it to actually show them that they are valuable contributors to actually be able to achieve that outcome at the end of the day.
But you talk to most organisations and they tell me they've got a strategy, right? Are you saying they haven't?
I would say that this strategy generally, when it comes down to it, is generally numbers.
Very, very numbers focused.
Absolutely.
Okay. All right. So the bottom line here, what do people really need to think about this? If they're thinking, I've got a strategy, but you're saying they haven't, what are the questions they need to ask themselves to really test whether they've got a strategy? So
one, they need to obviously look at, they need to really have a good understanding of the market and the customers. They need to understand the organisation, how the organisation is going to deliver, what they're going to deliver, and what are the key things within the organisation that they need to undertake and do to be able to deliver that effectively. I think a culture can be driven by fear, or can be driven by having to do something because I'm told to do it, or I truly understand what I really need to do.
And I feel empowered to do it.
And I feel empowered to do it,
right.
Exactly. That's a big difference in doing that. And I still believe today there are some organisations that do that really well, but I would say that only 1 in 5 strategies get implemented effectively. So you have a strategy on paper, but it's not necessarily embedded in the organisation. I think that's one of the key things.
Okay, now I understand where you're coming from there. So for empowerment of the people, to drive a high-performing culture, they need to be empowered, and they can't be empowered unless they really have a very clear strategy that they understand, the strategy of the organisation, and they can feel part of that and feel that they have a sense of contribution to that strategy.
Yeah. I mean, I've managed matrix organisations, for instance, in the past. And then as a matrix, you have functional managers that sits anywhere and everywhere. And you are managing a group of people. Some direct report to you, some have a dotted line to you. In the context of what you want to achieve, you need to kind of take the core metrics out of the equation. They still need to be measured, but you need to find some common ground that you can work towards as a collective group. And in doing that, you actually still achieve those metric outcomes, but you're focusing on, for instance, you may just focus on the customer. So I had a leadership team of 18 people, right, which is a big leadership team. Too big, really, but it was 18 people. And I think the key is that, we all, some of the objectives and some of the targets were actually in conflict with each other. So there was always a lot of that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think when you have a lot of that, it actually causes people on a personal level to feel disconnected or get frustrated or feel a bit annoyed.
Yeah.
So we sat down as a group and we said, we really need to do this. It doesn't mean that goes away. But if we do all our problem solving and all our discussion in the context of the customer and what's best for the customer at the end of the day, what will our problem solving process look like? We started on that journey, and surprisingly, the people that were the ones that actually fought it the most to actually go down that path were the ones that became the big advocates, because they realised, because they felt that they were the ones that always got, the brunt of whatever budgetary things that we needed to put against their on their balance sheet, or something that needed to be paid generally. So basically what happened was that once we had that problem solving and it was for the customer, we also worked with shared pain. And the shared pain then meant that we actually shared the pain across the organisation, and we looked at realistically. We didn't look at fault. We looked at what made sense.
I can equate this to a football team.
Yeah.
Right? Yes, you have all your champions in a football team, but if they all play as individual champions and don't understand the overall goals and objectives of the team and where they're going, they'll do selfish things, or they won't do what they need to do to ultimately achieve the end result. So it's how they all work together and what the strategy to do that is, so that I'll pass this off this time rather than going for goal, because that's more important for the team. Absolutely.
And I mean, I think, if you're related to sports or sports team, it actually makes sense. I mean, I've been in sports for a long time, and I think if you have that team view, that if the group is stronger than the individual, depending on how they collaborate and how they work together, then you will actually be quite successful. But you need to have the mindset of that to be able to do it.
And also the right people.
Yes.
I mean, the lone wolves in that sort of environment could cause more damage than good. They may be the guys that get 200% a quota, but they're likely to damage the team results.
Yeah, I agree. And sometimes, and I've had in my career some lone wolves, and it's an interesting conundrum to work with, because you can either let them continue working on their own, or you need to find a balance where they actually come into the fold a little bit to manage that as well. So you act for the greater good of the group.
Yeah, and you see that in my analogy of football a lot, where you get this massive champion that there's a lone wolf on the football side, and eventually you have to get rid of that person, because they're actually causing the team to lose.
I've had to do that too.
Okay, that's a good discussion. I think there'll be a lot of value out there.
Yeah.
I appreciate it very much, and I look forward to the next one.
Thank you, John.